Hey everyone, my name is Jason Broder. My company is the Cask and Keeper. A little bit about myself. I'm a senior journalism major, and I actually kind of stumbled into this last year, this competition with one of my projects for my journalism class. Liked it a lot, and then came up with this little idea for this year. So to start off, the Cask and Keeper is a meadery that has its own bee farm attached to it, much like a winery has its own vineyard attached to it. And that allows us to be the only meadery in the Northeast with our own bee farm, and the only meadery in New England using purely local honey. And because of our reliance on the bees, it's in our best interest to start raising awareness for colony collapse disorder and the environmental issues going on with that. So, since 2011, mead has grown 130%. It is the largest, or the fastest growing craft beverage on the market today. In comparison, craft beer in that same time period grew 39%. And UNH actually just launched a craft beer brewing program based off those numbers. I think they should have gone mead, to be honest. So, who's buying mead? A lot of the people who are drinking craft beer today are also drinking mead. They are typically males between the ages of 23 and 37. They are involved in this local and craft movement within our state. But mead is also a good alternative for women who may enjoy the principles of the craft beer market but don't necessarily like the taste of beer. Our product line has three basic meads. We have a very traditional mead using Lady Grey and hints of orange peel. We have a berry mead using New Hampshire berries, blueberries, blackberries, and what's cool about that is depending on the season, they're going to get a little bit different taste in that mead that you purchase. It could be heavy blackberry, it could be heavy blueberry. And then we have a fall apple mead using New Hampshire apples. And what's neat about that is in the fall, the honey that you harvest is actually a lot darker in color because the bees are harvesting that nectar from trees, so they're kind of getting like this woodsy, earthy tone that complements the apples pretty well. And then we also just have specialty seasonal type meads to use up either our additional inventory and honey, or just have like a Christmas mead or something like that. Now, let's bring all these up. So for pricing wise, our direct sale is $22.95. Our wholesale is going to be $13.75. That's actually in a case of 12 bottles sold to retailers for $165. And then it costs us on average $4.28 to produce a bottle. Depending on the honey harvest from that year, it could be a little bit more or less. Depending on the amount of honey you use for each particular mead, it could be a little bit more or less. Now for our competition, we have two meaderies in the state today. We have Moonlight Meadery, we have the Sap House. Moonlight Meadery is by far the largest. They are producing mead to be sold all over the region and the nation. They've also won many national awards, international awards. And since 2010, they've just absolutely exploded. And if you go into any grocery store or like discount beverage store, you normally see them sitting there. They got a nice little wooden setup, and half the mead's already gone by the time you get there. And we also have the Sap House, which is located in Ossipee. They are a restaurant bar type thing. They produce all their mead in-house, and they primarily use maple syrup instead of honey, giving them kind of an interesting taste. Now, I started this project, and to start up a restaurant type scenario like the Sap House or a large scale winery like Moonlight has a very high startup cost. And as a recent college grad, putting my money into that is not something that's feasible. But within the past few years, New Hampshire has actually launched a nano brewery license, which allows you to have a pretty much glorified home brewing type situation where you can sell what you produce to retailers and through direct sale at local markets. So we're going to go that route, and the startup costs are minimal at $37,504. And we have 4 months negative cash flow, but I also prepared two other scaling options, whether we wanted to jump into a restaurant or jump into that full-scale winery like we saw with our competitors. We're going to get to those in a bit. So our starting capital we have here, it's a $20,000 personal investment, a friends and family loan for $22,000 with a 5% interest payback on that. And then the small business loan primarily for the manufacturing equipment to make the mead. And we're going to get into those costs later. And then we have that additional line of credit just for additional expenses that we don't see, and to cover our inventory shortages for year one. So for the bee operation, we're going to start off with 75 hives with a cost of $26,074. And what's that's going to get us? We're going to have each hive producing between 12 and 18 pounds, which allows us, in each gallon of mead, takes 2 to 3 pounds to produce. So we're going to get 3,300 bottles on average.
Is that per year?
Yes, that's per year. Now to produce 3,300 bottles, that's the cost of the equipment that we need, and that's all detailed out in the sheets you guys have, what exactly we need for that. Now these are our projected sales for years 1 through years 3. And you notice there's a steady growth in sales as we transition more from direct sales at market over into retail wholesale sales. And we do have a negative balance year 1, and this is why. Honey you can only harvest seasonally. It's primarily from late spring to late fall. And it takes us 3 months to turn that honey into mead. So for year 1, our selling window is between August and December, but we have all that inventory to sell till next August when we get the new mead from year 2. Now, a big part of the business, coming from my journalism background, is to raise awareness for colony collapse disorder. And with the journalism industry like it is, there's simply not enough resources to go around with these newsrooms to produce sufficient amount of material to educate consumers and educate the public on environmental issues, especially. And bees are very, very important for both our economy and ecology. They supply 1/3 of our food supply for pollination and pollinate over 95% of our wild plants. And as you can see here, this chart, CDC is actually not particularly disease, but a collective term for all these 6 different factors that go into killing off our bees. And over here we have these 3, and those are all population based. They're our problems that we're attributing to. So in order to sort of combat that, it's our mission through advertising for a social responsibility that we're going to publish articles based on scientific research. We want to offer DIY home solutions. An example of that would be a recipe for a homemade pesticide that you can spray on your gardens using cayenne pepper, apple cider vinegar, and a couple other ingredients. And then we actually want to go out into the community and feature community members who are doing exceptional jobs with sustainability purposes. Barriers to entry are obviously the FDA and zoning restrictions. If I can't build it on the land that we have with our family and have to go scale up faster to a restaurant setting, that's going to be a problem. Small scale, as it is now, can be a turn off to investors or getting a loan. And variation honey production can cause possible shortages. But for scaling options, the more bees you have, the more mead you can make, the more money you can get. So for a restaurant size like the Sap House, but a little bit larger, kind of thinking like 7 Settlement in Dover, we're looking at $275,280. And for a more moonlight type setting, we're looking at $1.1 million. Which is going to allow us to produce 6,000 bottles or 24,000 bottles. And annual sales through the Sap House with a 60-40 direct sale to wholesale ratio is going to be around $113,004, with the moonlight meter being 15 to 85 ratio at $340,000 per year. And I can take your questions now.
Could you supplement, I like those 3 options,
Yeah.
right, scalability options.
Yeah.
Could you supplement some of those others and private label their shortages? If they're manufacturing and they're very popular,
Yeah.
would you think about?
Yeah, you could do that, but what a lot of those companies are doing, they're ordering their honey primarily from large honey distributors, which are now using local honey, and there's a bunch of problems going on with the honey industry, because the U.S. actually has a great shortage of it for our cereal. So what we're doing, we're stripping out all the pollen, everything that makes that honey recognizable for that area, mixing in a bunch of honey that we import over from China, and you're really just getting dirty honey with a lot of heavy metals and pollutants in it. So it's kind of gross. And being the fact that we can make our own honey, we're setting ourselves apart from them, and also we're getting that pure local honey at a much cheaper rate than they would.
Why
What's the
is-
cost
okay.
advantage? I mean,
Yeah.
you just.
Yeah,
you just-
so to produce this honey, we're
I mean,
looking
you
at
have
around,
control of the product, which is good, but the
Yeah.
cost advantage is
we're
real.
looking at around, what was it, $2.65 per pound. Whereas if you're buying it on the market, you're gonna be paying between $4 and $6 depending on the season.
But aren't you subject to the bee colony collapse thing with your own bees? So
Absolutely.
What are you gonna, how do you protect yourself against your supply of honey?
Yeah, so one of the things with beekeeping, proper management is key. One of the main contributions to colony collapse is that we buy bees primarily from Europe. We use Russian bees, we use Italian bees. And having all that same species of bee makes them very susceptible for disease and other things. So mixing the Italian bees with the local bees that we have here makes them more immune to
I
that.
still know what to do though.
But yeah,
Different
it-
flowers.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
How many bees can you put in a given, well, I mean, is there a saturation point where you have to have acreage?
So
or-
what's strange about bees is that one colony can have anywhere between 1,000 and 200,000 bees depending on the point in the season. A lot of them, they produce a lot of bees through peak months of nectar collection, and then a lot of them die off in the winter, then they build back up in cycles like that. So it does vary, but it's between 1,000 and 2,000.
And how far does a bee go to get, can it go
Yeah.
miles and miles? And-
Yeah, 2-mile radius
Wow.
from the hive.
The colony collapse, right?
Yeah.
Seems to be a business risk. Is there any insurance against that?
As of right now, there isn't, which is why we saw in 2013, I'm not sure you guys are familiar with it, but almonds are really hard to buy, and the main reason is we just didn't have enough bees to pollinate. So we see that in every single industry, or every single sector of beekeeping, but you can build them back up.
I wonder if, because it's so important, everything you
Yeah.
lined up there seemed like it touches a lot of other industries.
Mhm.
It would behoove them to invest to help you scale up, to get the
Yeah.
bees out there so that almonds and other,
Yeah, absolutely.
is
I
that
mean,
something
can you-
that you pursue?
Yeah, can you
Yeah.
grow the bee business? I mean, geez, it seems like you're very
Yeah.
familiar with it.
Yeah, right now, standard commercial bee size is around 1,000 hives, and they do a lot of commercial accounts where they go and pollinate for farmers, and then sell the honey on the side. We would, with the Moonlight model, we would have that 1,000 hives and would look into actually running the beekeeping business to supplement our mead sales
So you
So we
take
can-
the hive to the
Yeah,
customer,
you take
leave
it-
it there for
for a couple weeks while
harvest
they,
day, whatever.
while they do the like pollination for apples and whatnot.
Yeah.
Then you take the hive, pick it up, ship it to a different farm.
And you're able to charge for that and produce honey.
Yeah, I think the standard amount was around 2,000 to 3,000 depending on the size of your farm.
It's a
That
clever,
pollinated.
clever system, that they do, particularly in California.
Mhm.
And so, one, somebody's paying you to bring your bees over to their property to
Yeah.
pollinate their apple trees or whatever it is, but you get to keep the honey.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things I wanted to touch on was the processing side.
Okay.
And, I guess I was surprised when I saw the fermentation and aging as you're really running it 6 months of the year, and I've seen all kinds of fermentation for food and beverage and industrial products, and I've never seen fermentation processes take very long. So
Yeah.
the question is, how long does your fermentation really take?
It actually takes 3 weeks to make the honey into mead, but then we want to age it in
Yeah.
barrels. You just get that more robust taste like you would with wine. And that's how we're going to get the premium cost per bottle.
So is there any way that you could actually source enough raw material
Mhm.
so that you could at least run the processing side on a year-round basis?
Yeah, and that's something you can play with. You can have a lot of hives, and you can collect a surplus of honey, so you can
Or is
produce.
there anyone else you can buy honey from?
Yeah, but then you're going to run into the same cost we talked about before with
Yeah, you
those
still have some
market.
pretty good margins in it.
Yeah, exactly, so
I mean,
you can
buy
play with
from-
that, but you
buy
are
from
gonna pay
Latin
more
America,
for
And
achieving honey.
I mean, there's an interesting optionality too, that if there's a shortage of honey, you don't have to process it. You can get it to honey from your own hives, and then if somebody wants to pay you $10,
Right.
you say, well, wait, I'll just sell you the honey, I don't have to make as much of my brand.
Exactly.
So,
You've got
there's-
options.
And that's
I mean,
what's nice about
that's
having
it.
that low
I mean, that's
overhead
usually
cost
what you're
too,
looking
is
for
You
is,
can easily do that.
you know, we call it having more finishing capacity than you have in starting material, and that way you have choices for the outlets. So, you know, that is interesting. Now, is there a limited supply of honey in New Hampshire?
In New Hampshire, I'm not sure of. I do know that we don't have any commercial bee farms, so it's mainly hobbyist beekeepers. that-
So those who are selling honey in New
Yeah.
Hampshire probably aren't, it's not being produced in New Hampshire. It's not, I mean, the honey is not from New Hampshire necessarily, right?
No.
Okay.
If you do find like local honey, it's from like on one of those roadside stands.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say,
Yeah,
I buy
it's a
local
clever-
honey
Exactly.
and it's in
Yeah,
a roadside
it'd be a clever
stand,
angle for your
you know.
marketing, but it's probably not realistic, so,
Mhm.
no.
So
What are
the other side of locally produced honey, right,
Yeah.
is, you know, I mean, look at how many people in this world, our state, whatever, have allergies, right?
Yeah,
So that if you eat honey that's locally produced, they statistically are proven that
yeah, actually,
you
that's
know,
my
it
story.
cuts down
It's-
on allergies because you're eating honey from local, whatever.
Yeah, as a kid, I
Right.
had terrible allergies, and my mom always fed me the local honey, and it definitely
Yeah,
gotten better.
yeah, I did it with my kids too.
So what are the odds your bees will stay healthy? I mean,
Yeah.
it's, you have to take certain initiatives apparently, but I mean, are they that prone to this?
They're not that prone. The thing about CBC is like it can happen whenever. There's no real like signs.
Is it across the whole hives?
It is,
Just
but
white
it's
shit?
also in seasons too. Like 2013 was a bad year, 2015 was a bad year, but between that, 2014 was a great year. So
Interesting.
yeah, so all those collapsed colonies then built up to their full size, and then they either stayed that way and others collapsed.
So they're a mile apart, do they both get it, or is it just one, or it's just?
It depends, because it is a collection of stresses. So, you know, a lot of times what happens is the bees will get a virus, then mites will come into the hive,
Right.
and then they're subjected to less forage, so they're not getting enough food to fight off both those things, plus you're taking the honey out, and then they just can't sustain themselves and they all
So you
collapse at
donned
once.
this beekeeping outfit and you work very intimately with bees, I trust.
So a couple of years ago, a student presented
Mhm.
at this competition, and I was in his group, right, for judging, and he was trying to introduce a genetically altered bee that would prevent the collapse of the colonies. Have you like looked into that? I mean,
Actually,
I'm sure it's horrifying to you. It was horrifying for the judges, I think. But, you
In the
know.
food industry, it's interesting because there's been a lot of issue with ingredients coming from different parts of the world that are not really food safe. And it's showing up, and honey was one that was a huge scandal in the
Yeah.
past couple of years. But there are agricultural processes or methods where you can deal with this.
Right.
And so for scaling up your operation, you probably wouldn't scale it up in the same first location. You'd establish 4, 5, 6, 7 locations. Each would have their own bee colony and production, so that if you had,
Hedge or something, yeah.
disease or mites or something,
Your
it might
location
wipe out
hedging.
one, but it doesn't wipe out everything.
Well, it'd be
And
good about
there's
that as
stuff to
well.
pollinate, you know?
Jason, one other thought, and I know there's not, you checked into it, it sounds like, colony collapse insurance, but there's something to pursue, at least look at, and that's general business interruption insurance.
Mhm.
Okay, categorically, if your business is interrupted because there's a storm, if there's whatever, not hazardous, but I'd look into it because it might still service you
Mhm.
in this specific instance as opposed to trying to insure that specific instance. Just
That's a great
take
idea.
look.
On the mead side, one
Sure.
other, so the first time I bought mead, I was
Yeah.
surprised at the price. My sons have, the millennials, yes, they're
Mhm.
drinking them, but it's that price point, they're still buying it at that price point.
Yeah,
It's not your cheap beer or, whatever.
No,
You can buy a whole
absolutely.
lot of other things, and you don't get that much for
Mhm.
that cost.
Yeah, I know Moonlight Meter, they charge $13.75 for a 375 milliliter bottle, which is about
Mhm.
half a wine bottle,
Right.
and those are still flying out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does taste good, but
Yeah.
I thought for that age group, I was like, whoa. They're
But it's
willing to
unique.
put that money up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
The
definitely-
uniqueness that you're getting and local honey and,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
it's resonating apparently, right?
What's the alcohol content of mead? Is it like 12% or is it that high?
It's between 6 and 12.
All right.
It
Yeah.
depends.
So it's more like a beer than wine.
Between.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like actually the
Between
perfect
beer and
cross
wine,
between
yeah.
beer and wine. It's
Yeah.
right there.
So what's next?
What's next? Not sure.
If you had to choose one of those three scenarios,
Yeah,
what's your choice?
I'm most interested in like the restaurant type one. Just like that's where I'd be happy being. But just starting out, the option I presented you guys seems to be the most practical.
Is it just you? Who's in this with you? Just you?
Just me.
Just you. And you did a story on the colony collapse?
Yeah, I wrote a couple stories. I worked with UNH and actually put in like a V hotel, so I kind of like saw that getting installed and wrote about that a little bit. And this, I like bouncing around, writing about different stuff, and this was something that definitely piqued my interest and saw a need for, and it's fun.
Where'd you
fun
pull
with
your
business
logo
to make
from?
that happen.
The clever little logo.
I like
Yeah,
that.
thanks.
Yeah.
Do you design that yourself?
It's
Yeah.
You might have a second career in
Yeah.
logo
Oh,
design.
So in the off-season,
Yeah, right.
when he's not producing, you can be designing logos for other people.
Yeah, it's nice.
Great.
All right.